Okay, we're here with Monique Wilson. She flew in. Um,
2.5 weeks ago.
okay, for the opening of Into the Woods,
which opened last Friday.
Okay, how was the opening?
Great. The opening was great. We have a great cast, and I think all that 12 weeks of rehearsal really paid off. And yeah, we had a great responsive audience. But remember, we have 8 more shows to go, so we hope that people don't procrastinate. Normally, just they go in the very end lang. So we hope that at least second and third weekend we can still have a lot of audiences, same as our first weekend.
Why Into the Woods? What attracted you to the material? New Voice is known more for, you know...
New Voice is known for really sort of cutting edge, dark material, that's quite socially provocative. Actually, I think Into the Woods has always been like that, except that the perception it started to get here was that it was a wholesome family musical, just because there are fairy tales. But people don't realize that the fairy tales are from Grimm's fairy tales, so they're actually already quite dark textually. And I think with the proper treatment, and I think the way it was intended to be staged by James Lapine, by fusing all those like dark stories together, and then us being revealed to us that there are really no happy endings and there are consequences to everything. That's quite socially provocative, especially in our time now, in our contemporary times now. So I think it was the right time for us to do something like Into the Woods, which is not as risque, perhaps sexually, as our cabaret or Aspects of Love, but still quite socially provocative nevertheless. And it's really a reimagined version of it. It's been around for quite some time, this show, and I think what makes a show a really good one is when you can reinterpret it to fit your own vision of what you feel the show is about.
Well, when you say reimagined, in what form did that take in your version?
Basically, in the staging, in the casting. If you've seen the show, you'll see that we didn't cast to type too much. We broke some boundaries in terms of casting also to what people may have normally perceived those fairy tale characters to be. At the same time, still being truthful and faithful to the actual context of James Lapine's story, which is to really humanize all the characters. And that's probably one other revolutionary thing we did, is to make sure we didn't cater to just caricatures, which is so easily can happen when you do fairy tale characters. Is we really had to humanize them, and in humanizing them that's when a lot of the issues come up that are prevalent in the show, and I think that's what fits our New Voice vision. Is that you come away with it. Of course, you're moved and you're happy and entertained, but some parts of it make you feel uncomfortable, which I think is what theater should do. Because only in that level of discomfort is when you're forced to probe into your own mind and assess your own lives and try to find the parallels of your own lives to what you're seeing on stage. And I think Into the Woods provides that, because it talks about human relationships, situations where the dynamics are all about power and greed, or people also being apathetic to things that don't affect them. But in the end, when a larger problem happens, people are forced to work together and depend on each other to be able to survive it. And I think in our times now, where politically it's in such a vulnerable state where we are now in the Philippines, I think those kind of shows can give us a glimpse of what the possibilities can be like in life when we actually go beyond our own selfish desires, which we see in Act 1 in the show.
So, is it a for adults only show?
Actually, no. It's actually we
Can it apply
recommend.
to children also?
Yeah, it can certainly, because actually we need to transform the minds of our children while they're young pa. Because sometimes to transform them when they're much older is much more difficult job. I think when you can inspire young ones early on in their lives, then they won't get into bad habits like most adults do. So I think, although there are some dark moments of the show talaga, which might be a little scary for kids, so we recommend that it's parental guidance for age 7 and above.
So
which I think a 7-year-old can already understand the context if it's explained well by an adult.
So there has to be some explanation and context
And
from
an
the
adult
parents.
beside them.
Yeah.
Also.
Okay.
Because there are some visually potentially scary parts that might scare a younger child.
Which is kind of antithetical to what we usually think of when it
Yeah.
comes to musicals, right?
Yeah, because we also think fairy tales are also sanitized because of Disney and all the commercialism that's gone around that. But if you look at the actual context of the Grimm's fairy tales were written to provide us lessons, valuable lessons on life. So they're almost satirical. And I think that's what comes fully alive in James Lapine's writing of it. When he fused all these stories together. Of course, he wrote another narrative that's original, fusing all the stories. But I think it's that there's a lot of irony in it and a lot of satire, and I think that's what gives it its edge.
You are working with you were able to gather really big names for some of the biggest names actually in local theater for this one. Michael Williams, Tommy Abuel, Menchu Lodchenko, for instance, Dean Sherman. How's it like working with people like?
You know what? They're fabulous. They are, to me, they epitomize really what great talent can do when equaled with professionalism. Because there's a lot of good talent
and good material.
And good material, yeah. So there's a lot of good talent that becomes wasted talent in this country when they don't adhere to what our standards of professionalism are. And I think we were very conscious about choosing not only a great cast who could really fill those roles, and the demands for those roles were quite high because you have to be able to sing very complex music of Stephen Sondheim. And as we know in musical theater, that's like the Olympics of theater. Yeah, and it's very much like some of the work of Weber, where you have to be vocally equipped to be able to do it, and also musically you have to be very focused because some people can sing well alone but not as a group, so you have to be able to harmonize, sing in different harmonies.
And Into the Woods is heavy on harmony, right?
Yeah, and it's syncopated. It's all against the beat. So you have to even be even better pa musically, because to be off the beat is harder than being on the beat because it's sadya, it's on purpose. At the same time, the characters are also very complex, very, very complex. And I think this is sometimes the misconception of Into the Woods, because so many schools have done it abroad, it's been around for almost 20 years, that, it's a children's tale, so it must just be an easy thing to do. It's actually not, because the characters are so complex, and they have to be multidimensional, they have to be completely layered for them to be humanized. So, as a result, we had to find performers who could really sing well and who could really act it. At the same time, though, it's a very rare theater piece that's an ensemble piece. No part is really a dispensable part in the show. So you had to also find actors with the proper attitudes, because they had to work really well as a team, and they had to trust their creative team because it's quite a complex show. So if you will resist what your director or choreographer tells you, then you're not the right person for the show, because then you won't gel into what the show needs. And I'm so proud of this cast because they really not just displayed the artistic demands that we demanded of them, but the fact that they did it so generously and so humorously, and they were always very professional. We never had a single problem with the cast in terms of attitude. They really gelled well together because they knew what it entailed, the material, and they respected the way we work at New Boys, which is, we're really very proud of our exacting standards. We're unrelenting when it comes to that. And to us, the friendships aside, if you don't follow certain standards and rules, then you can't really be part of the show. And I think over time, a lot of theater actors have come to know that now. So if they don't want to do the work, they don't bother to audition for us. And those who did audition, like all these huge names, auditioned for us. None of them were just offered the part. So can you imagine already what that says about them? That they're really humble, that they really are professionals, that they didn't wait to be offered the part. So to us, we were just only too happy that the people that we had in mind actually auditioned, because then everyone starts from the same level, and then they go through the same process when they start rehearsing with us, and they have to work just as hard as each other. And in the end, you see naman talaga the results. And that's where it becomes a really fulfilling theater experience, not just for us who produce it, but for also the actors, because, there's something to be said about being on a show that you can really be proud of. And you're proud of it. Why? Because you just worked so bloody hard for it.
Do musicals still matter?
Yes, musicals matter. Yeah, if they're good and if they're
I'm
done
asking you
properly.
this because you've done musicals for
Yeah.
like most of your life.
Musicals matter, but I think they have to say something already. But I think sometimes it's not in the actual writing of the musical; it's in the treatment. A lot of these musicals are classics, and they can be reinterpreted and envisioned, and to look at it with a different lens. Because 20 years ago, 20 years ago, life was different then. So if you look at the musical now, and there's so many other issues now happening in our lives. Because I always tell our creative team, if we cannot make a musical contemporary to our daily lives, we can get something out of it, then there's no point in doing it. I believe musicals should entertain, but they should not just be for that too. Because the arts is such a powerful medium, especially the stage when it's live. So it's a transformative tool, really. And even if the transformation is ever so subtle, it's still a very powerful thing that can happen to a person. To sit there and your life can change, or you can be awakened to something so huge that it can affect really your life in a big way. That's a huge thing. So I tell our actors, you have a grave responsibility when you're on that stage, because you can affect someone's life. If we do our show properly, if we don't, then you could be a waste of time for somebody too who's watching you. So I think musicals do matter if they are treated with the same kind of relevance to our daily lives, and when they are given the gravitas and the proper treatment they deserve. And of course, when they are also envisioned to not dumb down your audience. Because I think once you dumb down your audience, good or bad material will not matter in the end.
Can you imagine yourself doing Miss Saigon again?
No.
Because
No, I'm too old. I'm too old now. I think there's a time and place for everything. If I was given a chance to direct it, that might be an interesting thing to do.
what things would you change in it somehow, or how would you reinterpret Miss Saigon?
I would be more conscious of the reality of the Asian women on stage. In my time, kasi 1989, and it's no offense to anyone who did the show, we were also not politicized ourselves. We also thought bar girls loved what they were doing and they were just dancing to hook up the guys and all that stuff. And of course, later on when we started doing vagina monologues and I got older, I became a feminist, I became more politicized. I started to realize that these women are doing things for economic reasons, and they're not there to enjoy themselves. And that gives you a much deeper context of the lives of these women who are in those kind of professions like prostitution. And there's a huge political backdrop to that, which of course when we're 18 or 19 we don't see that. And in the late 80s also, the world as a whole also was not politicized enough to see it that way. So I think if I was to have my hands on Miss Saigon now, maybe directorially, definitely not to act in it anymore because I'm far too old now, I would give more weight to that. What drives a woman to do that in the first place? And I think also to not romanticize or glamorize this desire to be with a GI or a white man. I think Hollywood has romanticized that so much. It's not as romantic as it sounds. Sometimes there probably would have been real love there, but there would have been a huge need also. That I think in some kinds of stories like that, because we see it all in Vietnam, it's so glamorized that I think the actual context gets lost. And I think it does a certain disservice to the women who are in those professions. So I think if you're going to do something with that issue, then really you have to bring it to life as you have to expose it as realistically as you can and as responsibly as you can. Because then, as I said, we have responsibilities as artists when we're on stage. It's someone else's life up there that we're depicting. I would certainly also communicate more and partner more with Vietnamese boat people groups, because that's their life. I think we had one person in Miss Saigon help us with the prayer. That's it. No one really talked to us about what it was like
So
to
in
be a
effect,
boat person.
for more authentic texture to
and also the context, I think.
But purely as a musical, no, in terms of the music of it, do you still like Miss Saigon?
I do. It has a lot of dramatic, contexts, and a lot of the music is very, very good. And certainly as a singer, as an actor doing it, it's one of the most challenging pieces ever, because it's an
actorsy part.
It's an actor's part. And see, that's sometimes the misconception also with musicals, even in this country. Oh, you have to be a fantastic singer to the musical. I totally disagree. Sure, you have to serve the song because you have to be able to sing it okay. But I think you need an actor. You need actors
So
to bring it to life.
is it more like you have to be a singing actor or an acting singer? singer?
Ako, I always choose actors who can sing.
Okay.
That's just my preference as a director.
Okay.
Because I think something is really empty if you have a really good singer. But if they're empty, you're like an empty vessel there, then your story is not going to come to life and you're not going to be able to transport me into the song that you're singing. Sometimes an actor, even perhaps not with the greatest musical abilities, like Jonathan Price, for example, will be able to do that because it's in the acting where you can infuse the life talaga
So
and to fill it.
it's really telling a story through song. No?
Yes. And Judi Dench, for example, she played, she was the original Sally Bowles in Cabaret.
Right,
I mean, could you imagine now, like, Judi Dench doing it, like, as a non-singer, di ba? No, actually, you have to really train as both, eh. Of course, because syempre, you have to serve rin naman composer in the music, but sometimes it's a misconception that has to be really good singers. You know, good singers, ako, when I just hear good singers on stage and that's all they're doing is good singing, I tune out because to me, you impress me na for the first half of the song. But then where does it go? You know, if you're not moving me, I don't really much care about your good voice.
You stay in London most of the year, and I suppose you watch a lot of shows on the West End. What's the last musical you saw?
Actually, the last musical I saw was Cabaret, another version of Cabaret. It was not the Sam Mendes version. It was very interesting, and to think we've already done it ourselves. We've seen so many versions of it, even the film, and yet look at how a classic piece can just be reinterpreted even 5 years later, which means it's still so relevant with the times now because there's such a huge political message. There were some parts of it that I didn't like, of course, but there were many parts of it that I thought were even more politically provocative pa than I couldn't imagine how more provocative it can be. But then in light of the times now, it just gave me a different perception of it. They really focus a lot on the gas chambers of the Nazi camps, and it was not just intellectualized; it was visualized. To me, that was quite interesting ideas.
Did you get to watch the new Maria? The product
not
of
yet.
that
I followed. No, kasi, after you do a musical, sometimes you don't really want to watch it anymore.
Especially Maria, which you did here.
Yeah. I heard it's a good production.
Are you in favor of that idea of casting somebody through a reality
Yes
search?
and no. I'm kind of torn about it. Yes, because it totally showed that Connie Fisher, who had graduated from Mount View, was the perfect one to play it because you know what? She'd spent all that time training and she deserved it and she was the best one. But basically, there's something about having audiences decide who the best one is. So in that situation, they did a right choice. But what if next time they might choose the wrong one? So because like I know what it entails to be Maria, right? Because I played it before. And I think that's what we hear now is happening. Like in the beginning, she lost her voice for a time. Kasi while she is trained, she didn't have the experience. So doing 8 shows a week was kind of hard, and I think Andrew Lloyd Webber tried to give her an alternate, but in the beginning she didn't want. So nangyari, she had to learn the lesson the hard way and lose her voice in the meantime until she got better again. So there are things talaga that you really cannot risk it lang talaga. But of course, it made the show very popular, and it made a well-loved classic that people already love into something so commercial that now it's super full houses. But I don't know if all theater should be done that way kasi because there's something to be said pa rin about a director and his creative team choosing the best person, not leaving it in the hands of some people who might not know what the demands might be.
Okay, we'll take a break. Short break.